Hey, you know what stopped me in my tracks this week?
Oh, yeah. What was it?
This headline about a 19-year-old American citizen held by Homeland Security
Held, like detained.
for 10 days. Yeah, 10 days. This wasn't ages ago. This was just this month, April 2025, down in Arizona.
Wow. Okay. A U.S. citizen detained by DHS for 10 days. That immediately makes you think, how does that even happen?
Exactly my thought. So the young man's name is Jose Hermosillo, and the initial reason they picked him up, allegedly for entering the U.S. illegally.
Okay, but he's a citizen.
Right. And here's where it gets, well, even more complicated. Jose's family says he has intellectual disabilities.
Oh, okay.
So what we're really digging into today is how could a U.S. citizen, especially one with potential vulnerabilities, end up detained like this? And, what does this case tell us?
Yeah, that really flags a potential issue right off the bat, doesn't it?
Yeah.
With how individuals are maybe processed or identified.
So to try and piece this together, we've been looking really closely at a report from CBS News. It gives us a timeline and shares what the family's saying and, well, a little bit of what the authorities have stated. It's quite a situation.
Mm-hmm. And it really underscores how complex these interactions, especially near the border, can be.
Right.
And where things might, unfortunately go wrong.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. According to that CBS report, Jose was picked up April 8th
Right.
in Tucson, Arizona, by Customs and Border Protection, CBP.
Which is part of DHS, yeah.
And then, the very next day, April 9th, a criminal complaint gets filed in U.S. District Court in Arizona.
And the charge.
Improper entry. It's a misdemeanor offense.
Okay. Improper entry for a U.S. citizen.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. The complaint actually calls him an alien.
An alien, okay.
Yeah. Found at or near Nogales, Arizona, without the proper immigration documents. But get this, the CBS article notes the arrest actually happened in Tucson.
Which isn't right on the border, like Nogales.
Exactly. So there's a discrepancy there already.
That difference in location. It could be significant, couldn't it? Makes you wonder about that initial encounter. If he wasn't right at the border, what led CBP to that conclusion?
Well, DHS did offer some justification. They basically argued that the arrest was, and I'm quoting here, a direct result of his own actions and statements.
His own statements. What does that mean?
So apparently there's this sworn statement. It was posted on X, actually,
Uh-huh.
where Jose answered yes when he was asked if he'd entered the U.S. illegally.
He signed something saying that.
Yes, but this is where the family's perspective is just so critical. Remember, they say he has intellectual disabilities.
Right.
They say he cannot read or write. He has trouble speaking clearly. So their whole argument is he simply wouldn't have understood what he was signing.
And did the article mention anything about the signature itself?
It did. CBS News described it as looking childlike. It just says Jose.
Wow. That detail really seems to back up the family's concern about his comprehension, doesn't it?
Definitely. We even have a quote from his mother, Guadalupe Hermosillo. She said it in Spanish, but the translation is basically, he's never been able to read and was always in special education classes in school.
Okay, so that really paints a picture of his abilities or lack thereof when it comes to legal documents.
It highlights their belief that he just couldn't have grasped what that statement meant.
And it brings to that crucial point, about communication. How does law enforcement interact with people who might have cognitive challenges or communication difficulties?
And what's also really important here, the family says they provided proof he's American, documentation.
When did they do that?
Just days after he was taken into custody. That's according to court records and also DHS Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin.
Okay, so days after, not immediately, but pretty quickly. The authorities were seemingly made aware relatively early on that there was a citizenship claim with evidence.
Seems so. And the article also mentions his actual U.S. birth certificate was shown to the judge just one day after his first court appearance. And in that appearance, Jose himself said he was a U.S. citizen.
So wait. He claimed citizenship in court, and the birth certificate was presented the next day, but he was still held for how many days total?
10 days. From arrest to release.
10 days. So even after the birth certificate was shown to a judge, that really makes you ask, why the continued detention? What was the holdup?
That is the big question, isn't it? It's puzzling. Let's maybe back up a bit. How did he even end up interacting with CBP? He lives in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Right, not Tucson.
He was in Tucson visiting his girlfriend's family.
Okay.
And according to his parents, somehow during the night, he wandered away from the relative's home where they were staying.
Wandered away.
And then while he was just walking, he was encountered by CBP. The report doesn't give much detail on how that encounter went down exactly.
Hmm. That lack of clarity is tough.
Yeah.
Because how does a walk in Tucson turn into an arrest for illegal entry? You wonder what assumptions might have been made during that first contact.
Exactly. What happened in that moment?
And it makes you think about standard protocols for those initial encounters, especially away from the immediate border. How quickly are citizenship claims supposed to be verified, particularly when someone might seem vulnerable?
So then we get to his experience in detention. 10 days, his family eventually tracked him down in Florence, Arizona.
And what did he say about it? How was he?
Oh, it sounds awful. He was distraught, confused, apparently cried every night. He described the detention center as cold and just full of people who were sick and
Yeah,
coughing.
that sounds incredibly isolating and scary, especially for someone who might not fully understand why they're there.
We even have another quote from Jose, again, translated from Spanish. "When I sleep, I dream that I'm still detained."
Oof.
Yeah.
That gives you a real sense of the trauma.
It paints a stark picture, like you said. A vulnerable person in a really difficult spot.
And the family? How are they coping?
You can only imagine. His mother, Guadalupe, was actually hospitalized because the stress was so intense.
Hospitalized. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. She said, "I cried every day. I just wanted them to let him go."
That just brings home the human cost, doesn't it? The ripple effect on the whole family.
Absolutely. And his father, Jesus Hermosillo, he got a call at one point
From the
from an immigration official asking him to confirm Jose's U.S. citizenship.
And did he?
Yes, he confirmed Jose was born in Albuquerque. So, again, that information seems to have been available within the system. Someone called to check.
Which just makes the length of the detention even more, well, confusing. If they called to confirm and got confirmation, why still hold him?
It's really unclear. Thankfully, the legal system did eventually work. On April 17th, a magistrate judge in Tucson dismissed the criminal case.
Okay, so the charge is dropped.
Right. And Jose was released the next day, April 18th.
So free, but only after those 10 days had passed.
And the Arizona Attorney General, Chris Mays, she's weighed into, said on X, formerly Twitter, that her office is looking into his case. She called it wholly unacceptable to wrongfully detain U.S. citizens. And she mentioned her office actually reached out to ICE Immigration and Customs Enforcement. That's another DHS agency for answers.
So there's definitely concern at the state level. They want an explanation.
Yeah. CBS News also said they tried to get comments from DHS and from Jose's court-appointed lawyer.
Any response mentioned?
The article didn't say if they got one, which, isn't totally surprising in situations like this, but it does leave some public questions hanging.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's try and bring this all together. We have a U.S. citizen. His family strongly states he has intellectual disabilities. He gets detained for 10 days by DHS.
After being arrested for supposedly entering the country illegally.
Even though his family provided proof of his citizenship fairly early on, and he himself claimed citizenship in court with the birth certificate presented shortly after.
This case, it really puts a spotlight on some critical areas, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, what are the standard operating procedures for CBP when they first encounter someone, especially away from the border?
Right. And how do they assess claims, particularly if someone shows signs of, potential vulnerabilities, cognitive issues, communication problems?
And what safeguards are actually in place to stop American citizens from being wrongly detained like this? Is the system working as it should?
Especially, like you said, when the person might have real difficulty understanding what's happening or communicating their situation clearly.
It really makes you think hard about whether the systems we rely on are truly adequate.
Yeah.
Are they protecting the rights of every U.S. citizen, especially those who might need extra support navigating these really complex legal and bureaucratic processes?
Absolutely. And hearing about Jose's experience and his mother's distress, it just hammers home the human impact. 10 days of being scared, confused, that kind of thing can have a lasting effect.
Definitely. So here's something for you, the listener, to really chew on. What does it truly mean to guarantee the rights and the well-being of all U.S. citizens, especially those who might struggle to advocate for themselves when they're caught up in these kind of serious, confusing situations? This case certainly makes you pause and think hard about whether our current systems are doing enough. Are they sufficient?
It really does. It shines a bright light on just how complex immigration enforcement is and, maybe more importantly, how absolutely vital due process is for everyone, no matter their circumstances.